Hey, what's happening everyone? I am Sir James from Gamerfuzion.com, and in today's video I'm here to provide you with my review for Valkyria Chronicles Remastered, which is considered a hidden gem back on PlayStation 3. And now that's been brought to the PlayStation 4 at a really good steal of a price, all DLC included, updated visuals, and of course supported 60 frames per second. Pretty much that is true to what everyone's saying. So to kind of give you guys an idea of what's going on in the story, we're going to go ahead and start from the beginning. In 1935, you have the continent of Europa, who's dominated by two superpowers. You have the autocratic East European Imperial Alliance in the east, and of course you have the Commonwealth of loosely allied democrats, also known as the Atlantic Federation in the west. The economics of both powers depend on precise multi-purpose minerals called reginite. And because of this, the Empire decides to declare war on the Federation, sparking the Second European War, as the Empire uses military superiority to quickly put the Federation into a defensive state. Now, while all this is going on, the Empire decides to spread its resources to attack neutral state areas. And because of this, in the very beginning of the game, you are greeted by the hero that you're going to be following the pathway on by a character known as Welkin Gunther, who's the son of a hero of the so-called town. And because of this, you end up being enlisted into the military and you form your own squad known as Squad 7, who will wage a successful campaign against the Imperial forces and against the Crown Prince, also known as Maximilian. Now, going over the graphics, visually the game is actually very good looking, and I was kind of curious about their art style because I was thinking of a comic book, but then I kind of looked up more information about it, and based on what I found, the visual aspect of the game is actually based on Sega's Canvas graphics engine, which resembles pencil-drawn paintings and motion. And because of that and the great storytelling, just everything worked out naturally, and I was actually really pleased of how visually impressive the game was from start to finish. Next up, I want to go ahead and briefly talk about gameplay, but before I talk about the combat portions, I want to go ahead and start with Team 7. Now, Team 7 is going to be the initial team that you form shortly after the beginning once you are enlisted into the military and are given the title Tank Commander. And what's nice about Team 7 is that the units that you enlist into your initial squad, you kind of start to feel a bond, a connection as you progress throughout the storyline, which I find unique and engaging, especially the fact that you could also level up and train your infantry units and of course upgrade your tank as well as you continue on and so forth, while continuing on in the main storyline or taking paths into a branching storyline as well, which doesn't affect the main storyline, but you kind of get other aspects of people's stories. For example, to kind of give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about, is that, for example, Elise is a mid-range scout-based unit, while Welkin, of course, is the tank commander, which means he's going to be strong against any type of infantry class except for one. You also have shock troopers, which are an assault infantry. You have lancers, which specialize in anti-tank warfare. Of course, you have snipers, which will be able to engage in long distances and of course take out basic infantry units. And of course, you also have engineers, which help repair tanks and of course refill your ammunition for your overall team, and just other things like that, which means every type of unit in the game plays a positive and negative. Like, for example, positive, they'll be strong against specific units, but in the negatives, they will be weak against others. For example, the tank, the main tank that you get to control, is strong against almost everything. However, the only thing that could stop your tank is of course a Lancer based class or another tank. So those are the kind of units that you have to watch out for, so which means it's kind of vital at the very beginning that you pick specific units to take with you, so which means that's very important to kind of pick and choose your overall path so that way you don't end up in the defeat. So to kind of give you an idea of how the overall gameplay is that it's pretty much a part overhead turn-based strategy meets RPG meets real-time third-person shooter, and they have a system called Blitz, which is basically an innovation mechanic that makes battles seamlessly strategic and action-packed, while you get to command and control soldiers, tanks, as you lead an empire through 30 different fronts. So the way the combat system works is that in the very beginning, you're going to kind of get a brief intel on what what is going to be up ahead. Sometimes they'll inform you if there's enemy tanks, anti-tank units, or whatever the case may be, to kind of help prepare and better yourself right at the start of the game. Of course, depending on the mission will determine of how many units that you get to take along with you, and you have these command points. Every time you select a unit, which basic infantry units of any kind uses one command point out of however many that you get at the start. If you were to control a tank, that's going to use up 2 command points, and basically you could keep moving units and engaging into battle until you run out of command points, which means it will be the enemy's turn next. However, a nice benefit about the command points is that you don't initially have to use up all your command points at once. Let's say you are done performing actions, but you have 4 command points left, which means you could already end your turn on the spot, let the enemy go, which means that when your command points fill up, you have 4 additional moves that you can make, which at times could either benefit you in battle, save some of your soldiers' life, or might give the enemy the upper hand. So you never know what the situation is going to be, but initially, again, it's a turn-based strategy, and you kind of have to pick and choose where you move your infantry units, kind of be smart about what kind of moves that you make and if you want to save or alter your different command points. Now, going over the sound aspect of the game, overall the soundtrack was pleasant to listen to, and of course for those of you who like additional options when it comes to audio and voiceovers in video games, this game does offer 2 different voice options. If you want to play the game with the English voice actors, you can. However, if you prefer the original Japanese dub, there's also that option too. I played the game through both sessions, and honestly both sounded really good. I didn't really have a favor over the other, so it really depends if you want to read subtitles or not. That's basically kind of user preferences. But as for the in-game soundtrack, the soundtrack was actually really pleasant. I really enjoyed it, especially when I was trying to think of strategies or what moves I wanted to make. Just while I was thinking and listening to the music at the same time, kind of put me at a relaxed tone, and sometimes things can be a little bit of a tense, but overall the voice acting for both English and Japanese along with the soundtrack is top notch. Now, going over the game's initial lifespan, overall there is some replayability for the game, even though at the end result the game doesn't offer a major replay value, but there are additional things you can do. For example, you have the additional DLC content that was included that will give you a few extra hours, and of course if you chose not to take these alternate pathways or storyline during your main experience, you can always go back and do those and kind of see what the outcome would have been. But do keep in mind that these so-called side missions don't progress the story in any kind of way in the main campaign, but it's always kind of nice to go back and, just in case you didn't do something, kind of see what initially that story content would have been. But overall there's a lot of mixtures and results that you can get here. Like for example, the main storyline took me well over 40 hours to complete. However, now that I'm playing it on a much higher difficulty level, it's probably going to take me well over 70 hours the second time around. But overall I actually had a really good experience with it because it's all about trial and error as you play these different results, and of course kind of experimenting with the different units or different tactics as you go along will also add into the replay value. Now, going over the innovation, the main innovation here would be their Blitz mechanics that they've added to the game, which I find pleasantly well and really enjoyable, but that's initially it. But with that being said, this game is definitely one to not miss out on, and for those saying that this was considered a hidden gem on PlayStation 3, I could understand why that is. But overall the game was pleasantly well done. I enjoyed the visual aspect, the gameplay experience, even though it may not offer a huge replay value, but then again you can't complain for the $30 price tag. So in the end, I'm going to give Valkyria Chronicles Remastered a 9 out of 10. If you're an RPG fan, you should definitely check out this game. But until then, I am Sir James from Gamerfuzion.com, where we empower your gaming.